who is also chairwoman of the European Subcommittee in Senate and a long-time Balkan watcher. Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama, and President of Montenegro, Jakov Milatovic. My name is Majda Ruge, and I'm with the European Council on Foreign Relations, and my job today is to enforce the so-called Munich rule, which is much better than the Chatham House rule. It's to make the panel dynamic and interactive. They say in the speaker briefing not to lecture or ignore each other. That means also not ignoring the moderator and her questions. And make sure that we finish on time. We only have 45 minutes. We can go a little bit over time. And since we have a very knowledgeable audience and want to open as soon as possible, I would ask you to please keep your statements short and strong, like espresso, as someone previously said at the MSC. What we want to get out of this discussion today is basically kind of three questions. Assessment of the situation in the region. What are the risks? What are the opportunities? Second question, what can the EU and the US do to minimize the risks and enhance the opportunities? And finally, I think what you have heard repeatedly throughout the MSC visit, what does the 2024 US presidential election mean and what it could bring to the region? I'm sure you cannot avoid this question in Europe. We really only have a couple of minutes per question if we want to get through all the topics. So again, please keep your statements very short. The EU enlargement is obviously a big topic, and comparison between your countries, especially Montenegro, Albania and North Macedonia, actually is a good indicator of how quickly the dynamics of EU enlargement can change. Since Montenegro opened its accession talks in the first 4 years, it has opened almost half of its chapters with the EU. And in the last 4 years that North Macedonia and Albania opened the accession talks, well, were invited to open the accession talks, not a single chapter has been opened. So again, an indicator how quickly the dynamics can change and how important it is to use the window of opportunity. And the question is, can we manage that given the internal dynamics? So I will start by asking the three leaders of the three NATO states and EU candidate states to tell me a little bit on one, how you see, what are your hopes and for the prospects and of the EU integration, and if that fails, what are the risks? And President Pendarovsky, I will start with you. Your country is headed into the general elections on April 24th, presidential and then parliamentary elections in May. The opposition party, VMRO Dipne, as part of its electoral strategy, has been blocking the kind of key requirement for the EU accession, which is the constitutional amendment incorporating Bulgarians and other minorities into the constitution. Given the election dynamics, what are your expectations? Do you actually have any hope that this stumbling block could be overcome before or after the elections with the new government? And if not, what is going to happen? Is North Macedonia going to be stuck again?
Thank you for an invitation. Then, first of all, it is not possible to solve that issue and to overcome that obstacle before the elections. We have already entered the so-called technical stage before the election. We have the caretaker government, according to the law, in the last 100 days before the election day, and they have the main task to organize fair and democratic elections. So that task will stay for the next parliament and the next government. But following the polls, one might conclude that the opposition, the current opposition, might take the power after the 8th of May parliamentary elections, and that's going to be for sure a period at the end of that very long sentence speaking about European Union integration. This statement will be disliked by Macedonian opposition, but that is the truth. As a matter of fact, they are not offering any alternative plan to what we have today on offer on the table. We have only one demand by the European Union: to put the small 3,500 Bulgarians, ethnic Bulgarians living in the country, to put in the preamble of the constitution and to continue with the second intergovernmental conference. They disagree because they would like on that wave of populism and nationalism to get to power. And believe it or not, they're telling to all the people in North Macedonia that they will, first of all, like to get to power, and after that to say what their plan is. That's kind of a mystification which is not necessary. It's quite clear. 27 member countries of the European Union agreed on that negotiating framework. Everybody knows what is in it. And if you are so optimistic or so unrealistic, I would say, to tell to the people that we will renegotiate the agreement with Bulgaria from 2018, and that even more ambitious to renegotiate with the European Union as such, the negotiating framework, that you are, I have to say that you're lying to your people. To say 2 more sentences plus before somebody from the audience would like to go forward with the Munich rule, European Union is not the issue of the day for many years in the whole region of the Western Balkans, not only North Macedonia. Why? But the most drastic case and example is in my country. In North Macedonia, we have been waiting for 17 years to solve that legendary name dispute with Greece. When we did that, the whole international community, even NATO in the first place, said, yeah, that's enough. We have managed to become the member of NATO, but we are still not fully into that accession process with the European Union. You cannot explain to the people that we are the only country in the world which has changed the name of the country in order to enter that organization, and all of a sudden some bilateral petty dispute is being put on that path.
In one sentence, are you able to tell me if this disillusionment, which is already there, is once again confirmed and the process does not carry on, what do you see as the gravest risk for your country, especially given the polarization? Do you see deepening polarization with the Albanian community?
It's not so easy and not so black and white. We are seeing even deeper polarization among ethnic Macedonians. Then ethnic Macedonians and more getting towards self-isolation. They wouldn't like to see European Union. They said they dislike us. They are simply deceiving us. They're lying on us. And we are already stuck in that process. Yeah. We are not going forward.
Yeah, thank you. Prime Minister Rama, if case there's no progress in North Macedonia, how is that going to affect Albania's integration path? Your destinies have been coupled for a long time. Will you be seeking to decouple? And can you see or envisage that Albania opens the first cluster if there's no progress in North Macedonia?
First of all, I have to tell you that you have asked the impossible espresso in Germany.
I'm going to enforce the espresso rule.
For an espresso, you have to come to Albania, and here I'll do for you a Turkish coffee.
We can do Turkish coffee as well.
Which would be composed by water, meaning everything will be fine, by some mass of brown dust, which would mean that I hope we are already decoupled from North Macedonia, because last time I was in a couple, we were prevented to enter in any other step due to some situation that was not connected with Albania, we're told, but was connected with another country, Bulgaria, namely. And since we have had our international governmental conferences and we had our screening processes, I don't think we're coupled anymore. And the boiling part of this water with the brown mass to make the Turkish coffee and to finish and give it to you is that the situation in North Macedonia is the result of, first and foremost, a European Union that is not able to end the practice of country napping, which means kidnapping countries, and of allowing states, member states, to use their seat in the European Union as a leverage against neighbors. And this is the most anti-European thing one can imagine. And then, of course, the implications are then in the countries themselves, because this is the best fuel for nationalisms, this is the best fuel for nonsense, and this is time unfortunately, in the world when nationalism and nonsense can succeed.
Do you foresee any problems with Greece on your path?
No, we love Greece, and I would never dare to say anything but we love Greece. So, and I didn't come to Munich to have my Greek friends disturbed because they follow me everywhere, and they want to see my face, they want to hear my tone when I say something about Greece. No, we love Greece. We love Greece. No way you bring us in conflict with Greeks here. And as you said,
Greek coffee you didn't mention. You said Turkish.
As you said, this is another conflict we can get because it's not yet solved. Is it Greek? Is it Turkish? And when I said Turkish, it's because there are Turks in Germany, but not that it's not Greek. So I say to my Greek friends, don't misunderstand the coffee.
Don't mess. No, I'm enforcing the Greek coffee rule.
No,
You are not decoupled from us.
he is joining Macedonian salad now, but...
Cafe Elinico as well.
No.
President Milatovic, I'm moving on to you. You're president of Montenegro since May 2000.
You see, they are front runners. They have the microphone in the tie.
We are.
They
were
believe
smart.
they are nearer to integrate than us. Oh my God.
You can see who is the front runner. Since May 2023, your agenda is Europe Now, which is the name of your party as well. Your goal declared is membership in the EU by 2028, even earlier than Charles Michel has kind of stated as possible. And you have completed some judicial appointments required to move forwards. At the same time, we saw some tensions between the governments of Montenegro and Croatia over a commemorative plaque about the war in Croatia. Croatian Minister of Defense refused to meet Montenegro Minister of Defense, and there's a history of Serbia's kind of direct involvement of support of some pro-Russian parties in Montenegro. Do you foresee any problems with your kind of neighbors as impediment to your EU goals? And can Montenegro just proceed ahead according to your timelines?
I think that there is a sense of optimism currently in the country, especially given the change of the political establishment that we had over the last few years. As you rightly said, I was elected as the president last year. Also at the end of the last year, we got the new government. The prime minister is a colleague of mine from the same party. We actually used to be both ministers within the first government following the elections of 2020. I was an economy minister, he was the finance minister. So there is a sense of optimism, and indeed the agenda is ambitious. The agenda is pro-European, with the aim to have the country into the EU by 2028 and to become the 28th member state in 2028. I think that going back to sort of the regional story, I think that the accession of Montenegro as the smallest candidate country out of all the 10 candidate countries, the one which is institutionally the most advanced in terms of the, how many years we have negotiated, and the fact that we have opened all the chapters, we have closed some, as the fact that we are NATO members since 2017, and also the fact that we don't really have any issues with our neighbors, are all the facts that are sort of going in favor of a front-running position. However, the aim is really to stop front-running and to complete the process. And with that aim, there is a sort of a new sense of optimism. Going back to the wider region, to some of the things that were mentioned by the President and Prime Minister, we believe that the best way also to help the region would be to promote the Montenegro's accession into the EU, because the accession of Montenegro would be a story much bigger than Montenegro itself. It would be the light at the end of the tunnel for the region, for the entire region, because number one, it would really show to the rest of the region that accession is still possible and alive, which is not really the case in the minds of many people in the region, given the fact that the last country that entered was Croatia in 2013. So I think that this positive example is something which is needed, and especially now, given the momentum, the wake-up call, as I call it, in Brussels, which happened following the Russian aggression in Ukraine, where basically there was also an understanding that the enlargement policy is also about security of the European continent. And I think, taking all those bits in the account, I'm also very optimistic. And this is also the message that I'm, sending out today, the one which is full of optimism.
Great. Senator Shaheen, there's optimism on your left and pessimism on your right.
No, you counted me on the right.
I'm counting you as...
On the right.
You're right.
You all came to be entertained.
However, who's missing from the panel, obviously, are representatives of regional hotspots. And since U.S. is always there to deal with crisis and security, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your view of the risks in the region. We have seen a series of brutal attacks last year in the north of Kosovo on security forces. KFOR soldiers have been seriously injured. We have had murder of police officers, Kosovar police officers, Banjska, seizure of the monastery, and we have a continued destabilization of Bosnia by Milorad Dodik, who is openly putting on the agenda secession if former President Donald Trump gets reelected. How do you see the overall security situation in the region, and given many competing foreign policy priorities of the U.S., we're talking at the MSC mostly about Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, and Indo-Pacific. Does the U.S. have the bandwidth that is needed to put in political and security tools and prevent the region from escalating in the hotspots?
I think it's imperative that the U.S. and the EU have the focus on what's happening in the Western Balkans, whether it's Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia, or EU enlargement that recognizes that the presidents and the prime minister represent countries that are on the path to EU accession. And as President of Montenegro said so well, one of the opportunities that exists because of the war in Ukraine is a recognition that being in the EU is security for the countries in the EU, but also for the continent as a whole. And if we expect politicians to make difficult choices, to reform in their country, to support reforms, then we've got to show them that there is an opportunity at the end of that for the people of their country to enjoy the rewards from having made those difficult choices. So I think it's important for the United States, and we've seen Secretary Blinken was just in Montenegro and North Macedonia. I don't know if he's been in Albania recently.
Yeah, the day before yesterday.
I've been in all three of their countries in the last year and a half, and we are building a coalition in the Senate to recognize that we need to support the efforts in the Western Balkans. So I don't think we can walk away. We did that for too long after the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. I think we got peace and we said, okay, it's fine, everybody's on the road to becoming democracies, to doing the reforms, and we looked elsewhere, and we can't do that now. We've got to stay focused on what needs to happen, and I think the United States needs to be part of that effort.
And do you think that that is indeed happening? We know what is needed, but if I can push you just a little further on that one, you have signed a letter with a number of your colleagues in Senate urging the Biden administration to get more involved in de-escalating and helping de-escalate, especially on the relation Belgrade-Pristina. Are we using the right levers? We have seen public pressure and sanctions directed to the government of Kosovo However, not so much of public pressure has been put on Serbia. At least this is what the observers of the Western kind of Balkan politics say. Serbia remains very nationalistic and Russophile. Is it time to kind of engage in more robust diplomacy?
Well, I'm a believer. You know, my husband's an attorney, and his motto is sue everyone when there's an issue. And I'm a believer that we look at every opportunity for incentives, disincentives, for all the options that are out there. And so, you know, I'm going to continue to push the Biden administration. I'm a Democrat. I feel like I'm a good Biden supporter. I want to see them do everything that we can to support efforts in the Western Balkans. And I would point out that those diplomatic efforts are both public and private. So there are things happening behind the scenes that help to move the ball, just as there are things that happen in public. You know, one of the things that I think needs to happen, and I had a chance to meet with President Vučić this morning, met with Prime Minister Kurti yesterday, and one of the things I think is that they need to arrest Radojcic and put him in jail. He's admitted complicity in what happened on September 23rd and the killings, and he needs to now be held accountable for that. And Serbia and Kosovo need to cooperate on that.
Thank you for that. If I may ask the three gentlemen, your countries are contributing nations to KFOR. Albania has the largest amount of soldiers, I think 90, if I'm correct, in KFOR. Secret, maybe even more. North Macedonia is, I think, 58.
65.
And Montenegro is only 2, but still symbolic.
Macedonia has no secrets with anyone. They are open to everyone.
How do you see kind of the security situation in the light of last year's attacks? Do you worry? Has there been enough accountability? Senator Shaheen has just brought the issue of accountability up. Has there been enough accountability for those who have committed attacks on KFOR?
I believe that there is something substantial to never forget, at least on our side. I mean, on the side of the countries that have made their choice. Nobody has frankly obliged us to choose where we stay. And Albanians in particular, they had not the chance to choose for centuries. And the first day they could scream out what they wanted, they said, we want Albania like Europe. This was the slogan. And when
Europe
you...
now.
Sorry?
Europe now.
Now we want Europe like Albania, but this is for another day. So we have chosen, and it's never, to me, an excuse to not do our homework if someone else is doing things that for sure are not at all in the frame of the world we want to live in, and that contradict our choice. To be concrete, yes, Serbia has messed up big time, to not say the F word, not just because what has happened in Banjska, but because what happened the day after when President Vučić declared National Mourning Day for some killers. But is this a reason to forget what are the objectives and what Kosovo should stand? No. And I want to repeat here what I believe is very simple, although I know it's easier said than done. Kosovo is not negotiating with Serbia. Point. Kosovo is simply negotiating with EU and US as we are negotiating with EU. What I mean, there is a plan, the so-called French-German plan, which is very clear. There are things to do from one side, there are things to do from the other side. Why Kosovo has to even go to Brussels instead of taking its side, signing unilaterally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever they are, give it to Mr. Lajčák and say, we did our part, we are ready to implement, start implementing, and then leave them deal with the other side. It's not an excuse to not do things when the other side is behaving badly, because in that context, it's not about Kosovo and Serbia. It's about something happening in a frame where there are the European Union and the United States. So why and Serbia, with all the progress they've made, they are not the etalon country, you know, to say, they are doing this, they are doing that, they are doing that. So why? No, you do your part. We in Albania, and all of us here, not everything we have to do we like, but we have to do because it's what it's needed if you are together in this community. You know, when sometimes these guys take decisions that you say, you know, it doesn't sound right, but it's not for us to do something wrong. We have to stand all together. And so it's, as Secretary Blinken put, we are together in good and bad times. We are together for the good weather and for the far weather. So this is my take on it, and that's why I go back to what I said before. You know, we have neighbors that are in EU, and they should not forget that when they deal with us about the neighborly relations, because they have one more obligation than us to be representing what EU stands for, even in the neighborly relations. So same goes for us, and same goes for Kosovo, and same goes for Serbia. Serbia has to decide. But Kosovo has nothing to decide, has been decided. It's a country firmly on this community together with the United States and the European Union. Full stop. So
you have been granted much longer just because you're such a good speaker and
really?
entertainer.
I was just following you, and you were all the time looking at me in a way
exactly,
like saying,
please
continue. And so I just...
You can see...
I could see, yeah. Sorry for that, but it was your eyes inviting me to continue.
I will open to the audience very soon, since on the screen we only have 15 minutes left, but I was told by the MSC team that they will relax the rule a little bit, that we can go over time for 5 or 10 minutes. I do want to ask you all, before we open to the audience, one question.
What better they have to do after us here?
Nothing. They probably...
You saw the other panel? Did you hear anything outside? Like dead people...
Even though it was about Russia, right?
Yeah. A reason to be silent. Yeah.
Be silent. I'm sure there's plenty of expertise and knowledge in the audience and questions. I do want to ask about the US elections. This is an unavoidable question in Munich, but also from my point of view, we've been working a lot at the ECFR looking at the Republican Party foreign policy debates and what it means for Europe. Obviously, Europeans are worried about the impact of potential re-election of former President Trump on NATO and the US commitment to collective defense. All three of you are NATO members. Montenegro has been very often singled out by former President Trump as a country he wouldn't defend. But as more than that, we're worried about Ukraine, and Western Balkans is not so much on the radar. However, the leaders like Mr. Dodik in the Western Balkans are openly threatening secession in this scenario. Could I ask all four of you to quickly tell me what is it that you worry or do not worry about in case of this scenario, especially from NATO perspective, but also regional security?
Very shortly, we have quite a negative experience with the previous US administration, with the previous president.
Me too.
What I've been hearing at that time, I mean, I'm speaking about the Western Balkans, especially about this long-standing conflict between Kosovo and Serbia about the full international integration of Kosovo, was changing the borders, or that was the term, kind of a euphemism, adjusting the borders. And they have been even speaking, the high functionaries in the Trump administration, about swap of the people and territories. That is the recipe for catastrophe. If something like that happens, we will see the bloodshed like in the 1990s. Everybody knows that. The first collateral damage, if something like that happens, will be Bosnia-Herzegovina and North Macedonia, period. So we wouldn't like to see that rhetoric, even as a rhetoric. We wouldn't like to hear that rhetoric, not being that rhetoric eventually transformed into policies. That is, as I said, dead end. We have been in that in the 1990s. And if, believe me, if the so-called administrative borders of the former Yugoslavia had not been intact by the decision of the international community, then we'll still have some kind of conflicts and wars, and no one will know where one border starts and where the other ends. So please, we need the kind of policy. I am not going to vote for on the US elections, but we would like to see these kind of policies. Full engagement with the US, with the European allies, and full engagement with the Western Balkan countries.
Senator Zhny, I will skip and I will give you the last word. I'm getting signals from Montenegro.
Well, I think that Stevo is maybe a bit too dramatic about the things here. I think that we all appreciate the efforts that have been done by the Biden administration, given definitely his expertise about the Balkans and the expertise of his team, and I think that we have all appreciated that. But I truly believe that regardless of the administration in Washington, the strength between the EU and the United States and the role of the United States in the Balkans hopefully will and should stay the same. And also regardless of whether I am perhaps even personally a bit more closer towards what are the mainstream policies of the Democratic Party, I think that at the end of the day, it is up to the American people to decide, in the same way as we all, like that the people of our own countries decide about the policies. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that the American people know how to decide the best. But let's not forget that America is, the greatest democracy in the world, and in that sense, it's the country that has been ruled by different administration, and regardless of it, the strength between Euro-Atlantic connections have always been there, and I'm absolutely certain it will remain the same.
Okay, so for Montenegro, the worst that can happen is being pushed on the stage by Donald Trump. Prime Minister Rama, you're good friends with Rick Grenell. How do you see the situation?
Listen, don't count my friends, because I am friends of many improbable friends among each other. So this is not the point, but I would like to be here in the position to read this kind of statements that usually the American embassy and America does when we have problem of not getting along well together. So I would like to call upon Republicans and Democrats to calm down and work constructively together for the best of the American nation and the American people. So this is what they usually say to us, and now that they look like us, it's good to remind them that they are better than that. But this being said, I would not over-dramatize. First of all, Montenegro will not be attacked. Whoever will attack Montenegro will find much better to stay on the beach than to kill the poor Montenegrins. So Montenegro is a beautiful place for everyone to go and to have fun and sun and not make attacks. On the other hand, now seriously, I think there is a kind of over drama, and frankly, I don't feel good when I see our great European allies in a kind of alarm that something is coming, something is happening. First of all, the European member states have to increase their capacities, have to increase their spending, not because someone is coming in the White House, whoever he or she is, but because of Europe and for the sake of themselves. Secondly, if I recall well, it was the same discussion before 2016. It was Donald Trump who said NATO is obsolete, and there were discussions, but facts show that with Donald Trump at the White House, NATO got stronger, didn't get weaker. Because what was affirmed as a goal before, the famous 2%, remained. And if today the European defense is stronger or has become stronger, is due to the American pressure, I witnessed it, to increase the spending. So, you know, politics is politics, elections are elections. There is an over-Balkanization of politics, even in the US, but at the end, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. The day elections are over, the United States are back to their business, and I don't see this like a tragedy, because at the end it's the American democracy that will decide, and whatever they decide, they know better, as the founding fathers always have guaranteed us. So
thank you.
Now thinking that some danger will come from the United States, it means that we really need an espresso.
Right.
We really need an espresso, you know.
Senator Keane, would you like to comment, or should we open for questions? Would you rather skip this one, or would you like to say something?
No, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, with respect to NATO and former President Trump's comments on NATO, one of the things that Congress did last year was to say that the president cannot unilaterally pull the United States out of NATO. It requires a 2/3 vote of Congress. That was done directly in response to concerns about what would happen if future President Trump got elected and started talking about pulling us out of NATO. So there are things that a president can do that would weaken the U.S. participation in NATO, but my assumption is we have a strong bipartisan effort in Congress in support of NATO. This is, I don't know, maybe my 10th time to this conference, and every delegation has been bipartisan. And it's been an effort to say to this conference and to the United States back home, we stand together in support of the aspirations that are discussed at this conference. So I think it's important to make that point. The other thing, however, as we're all in democracies, and we know you can't control what people are going to do in an election. And you know, one of the people we've quoted frequently in the last 2 days is Winston Churchill, who said the Americans will ultimately do the right thing after they've tried every other option. And so I'm a Democrat. I'm obviously not going to support Donald Trump because I think he was a dangerous leader, particularly in his last time in office. I was there on January 6th when he encouraged a mob to attack the Capitol and refused to do the peaceful transition of power that is critical in a democracy. So I think it's important to educate people about that and to say, in a democracy, that's not the way we behave. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in human rights. We believe in the ability to have free and fair elections. And we don't believe in an autocrat staying in power and refusing to give it up after a free and fair election.
And there's also something called Heritage 2025 agenda, which foresees a huge-scale deconstruction of what they call the deep state. So there's much more to the second Trump term than the first Trump term. I think we need to be careful, assuming it's going to be the same. And he says himself it's not. Now, we have actually 4 minutes left here, but as I said, we are allowed to go a little bit over time. If you have questions, please raise your hand. Oh, we have the former defense minister of North Macedonia.
Thank you, Maida. Just a very quick question to all of you. If you foresee enlargement 2030 or 2028, how do you see it? Will it be an individual or a group thing? Will it be focused on the East, or we will remain the interest for the Western Balkans? So I don't need optimists and pessimists, but really, what do we expect and what do we aim for? Thank you.
And this is a question for everyone. You get...
With the exception of the United States, of course.
You get...
No, with your exception, because she can't ask you.
Yeah.
A member of your delegation asked you.
Pre-agreed.
1 minute, please.
1 minute.
1 minute. We have...
My hope is that we will get into the European Union in the next 4 to 5 years. My hope. But if the European Union will not change the key decision-making principle, then everybody to say yes, then we will not see anybody entering the EU by the end of this decade.
Thank you. Prime Minister.
5 minutes, seconds.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was a Turkish coffee with no sugar. No, I think, first of all, no dates should be in our mind, because I've passed through a traumatic period of dates, organization of wedding. Everything was set and the bride never showed up. And just a letter came named progress report. We love you. We'll see each other again. But continue to work because we are not ready to talk. So no dates. It's not about them, first of all. It's about us. And no rush. You know why? No rush. I used to say it before we started accession talks. All the time, hey guys, we are not asking to enter EU. We are asking simply to start accession talks because we want to learn. And the negotiations are the most incredibly productive know-how transfer that a country can get in this planet to become a functioning state with functioning institutions. So give us this possibility. And then we will enter only when us and you will be ready. So now we don't have to rush. We have to do our homework and we have to make our countries like member state-like. And then it's up to them when they'll decide. Now, there is the other side of the story, which is them. It's not only us, okay? It's them. So I don't think that as the process is designed will work, because the process as designed is nothing or all. Should not be nothing or all, you know? When you start talking, you are fiancé. It's not a marriage, but it's still a relation. And oh, the German humor is coming. This is what the Balkans do, you know. Once you are affected by them, you find some sense of humor. It's great. But we have to leave today, so you have to go back in your gloomy seriousness. I was saying it's about changing the way this convenient relation will develop, meaning something that is between the old nothing or all and the full membership for everyone, which would be a disaster if Europe is as it is today, because they are 27 and they have so difficulty to decide. Imagine now the six Balkan guys entering there, and good luck with the consensus. But something in the middle would be like it has started: the new growth plan, more money for us in the region, and some openings for the integration in the European internal single market. Mm-hmm. And then security. Security, we should be all together. Why to not be the same, being in the same tables and so on? And why to not let us be everywhere, in the corridors, in the European Parliament, in the committees, in the Council, not as members with the right to vote, but as part of the same family. So it's like a bit when you go to your fiancé house, you know, they allow you and you are a member of the family. And of course, in the evening you have to F off, but tomorrow you come again. So this is a bit how I see it, and there are good signs that this is changing. And then I don't know, because what is happening with Ukraine and what is happening overall, it's sad enough that we need, not us, because we said it long ago. Hey, with the Western Balkans, it's not enlargement. I don't need to enlarge if I have to have my stomach function with the rest of the body. I have to have my stomach function with the rest of the body. With Western Balkans are within EU borders. European Union is the only reality in the history of geography and of maps with one external border and one internal border. And within the internal border is us. So they cannot get rid of us. We are there. So, or now they use us to digest better, or we'll provoke indigestion, then they'll collapse. And then they'll enlarge because they'll become like boom from the collapse, you know? So
this is really, you have to stop here because it's such a good metaphor. Do not ruin it.
Well, I'm going to be...
What's happening with you is fantastic. You want to stop me and you don't want me to stop. It's fantastic.
I do. I'm just being diplomatic.
I'm going to be a bit less artistic than Eddie. I guess, you know, that's also sort of the fact that I'm an economist. And I have a very practical answer. You know, our plan is the following. A few weeks ago, we had an intergovernmental conference with the Commission. You know, there was a progress made. The next one is hopefully going to happen by the end of the Belgian presidency, where you know, there's going to be a noted progress within the rule of law, particularly given the appointments that we have been doing within the judiciary. And we are really hoping that some of the chapters that are currently ready to be closed are going to be closed by the end of this year. That would bring Montenegro, hopefully by the end of the year, to the fact where we have closed 1/3 of the chapters. For the next year, we would be hoping to further close the chapters, so that by the end of 2026 or early 2027 we can close the most difficult chapters. This is rule of law, competition and state aid, and ecology. So the 2027 is basically left for the ratification of our entry agreement by the national parliaments of the member states, so that by the mid of 2028, which would also coincide with the new budgetary framework, Montenegro can indeed be the member state. And I think that Europe also needs this successful story, and that's the plan. And I, as a president, and I truly believe the newly elected government, will do as much as we can in order to stick to the plan.
Any more questions in the audience? I can see. Yes.
A quick one for everybody. Sorry, Bloomberg News, Ilya Arhipov. Is there Putin factor in the Balkans, and how do you feel it? Is it increasing or decreasing?
You mean Russian influence?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I can.
How about, yes, why, I mean, we've just had a visit to Montenegro of a high-ranking State Department official who was talking about Russian disinformation and fighting of Russian disinformation in Montenegro. Do you want to say something about that?
I mean, listen, what currently, and I think, this is the fact, in, not only in Montenegro, but across the region, the soft power of Russia has decreased since the Russian aggression in Ukraine. So that's number one. Because generally the public, there is no public understanding anymore for the activities that Russia is taking in Ukraine. That's it. So I think that with that Russia lost. Number two, 5 years ago, Montenegro is a tourism-driven economy. We are a Mediterranean country. We have a very nice coast, and 25 to 30% of our tourism was Russia. Now it's about 5. So and that's also Russia losing the game there. So what my feeling is that Russia has lost its position in the Balkans, and I think this has been the fact in many of other places across Europe. Naturally, Russia now has a sort of a different tactic to create a bit of a chaos here and there. But I think as a member of NATO, we are sort of a very obvious case out of the Russian influence.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that one? You have hosted a very large amount of Ukrainian refugees. At one point, you had 5% of the population, which has gone down.
Yeah.
However, you also have significant number of Russian assets on your territory from the time that you've referred to when Russia was heavily present in Montenegro and investing. Now, should the EU use Russian assets to finance Ukrainian reconstruction, and can Montenegro lead the way in this respect? Can you do something about it?
I mean, in the same way as Montenegro behaved as a sort of a recipient country during the wars in former Yugoslavia, when at one stage, I think almost 20% of our population were coming from, different parts of the former Yugoslavia. In the same way, we have opened our doors for the Ukrainian refugees. At one point, actually, we had, the size of our country is 600,000 people. At one point, we had 90,000 Ukrainians. We have opened up the labor market. We have opened up the, public healthcare system for them. Many of them have now left. Many of them have left back to Ukraine, as the situation has came to a normality in some parts of Ukraine. And I think in that way we have also showed the support towards Ukraine. On the assets, I think that the way we have behaved, particularly as part of the decision that has been made, in the Council of Europe. I think it was last year at the conference in Iceland, where we have joined the damage fund. I think that's the way to go. And Montenegro is fully aligned with the foreign security policy of the EU. So everything which is being decided on the assets, that is closely being followed by the state of Montenegro as well.
Thank you. Senator Shaheen, I'll give you the last word, and then we'll close because I think everyone wants to go to their dinners.
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you all for coming. On the asset forfeiture, one of the things that we are considering in the it's out of the Foreign Relations Committee now in the Senate, and I expect it to go to the floor and pass Congress, is a bill that would allow us to freeze and take the assets of Russia to pay for reconstruction in Ukraine. And it seems to me that one of the challenges we have as we think about how we address Vladimir Putin and other dictators in the future is to hold them accountable. And one way to hold Putin accountable, and he doesn't seem to care much about the lives of the people who he's sending into battle in Ukraine, but he does seem to care about money. And so taking the money and using those dollars to help the Ukrainians rebuild their country seems to me a good policy for us in the United States, and I hope for Europe. So I hope this is something that will be considered favorably, and that we can all ensure that at least in that way, Putin is held accountable for what he's done.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and maybe an applause for the panel.